Stay Lit, A Prescription to Avoid Doctor Burnout, 2020, by Dr. J.W. Crosby, MD. Here are my top 10 ways to avoid complaints in the nursing home. Talk to the patient or their substitute decision maker about any major changes. Lack of communication is a huge cause of complaints. I go 3 times a week to my homes, and it takes me less time than going once a week because I am ahead of the curve. This gives me lots of time to talk to patients and their substitute decision makers. I once had a 92-year-old man with myasthenia gravis on steroids. He bruised really easily and fell all the time due to weak muscles and dementia. His daughter was worried the staff was abusing him, so I called her once a week for 5 years to go over what was happening. It only took a minute and saved us all grief. Tranquilizers. A huge cause of complaints is when a confused patient is put on a tranquilizer and then falls and gets hurt or is drowsy when the kids come to visit. I phone the substitute decision makers and tell them this: "Your dad has dementia and is hitting our staff when they try to give him a bath. That is why he's here. You couldn't handle him at home with the help of home care, and the hospital couldn't handle him. You've been replaced by 10 people. We will try to redirect him to do other activities like music or hobbies, but we may have to give him a tranquilizer. We will start out with the lowest dose and move up slowly, monitoring him carefully, but he may fall or get drowsy. There is no way to guarantee any human will not fall, but we will try to prevent it." I then shut up and let them talk and ask questions. There is no good answer for these types of problems, and we have to keep talking to the families. They often feel guilty about putting a loved one in a nursing home and can take it out on the doctor and or the staff. Family meetings. The appropriate staff and I meet with the families if there is a problem, and we have any out-of-town children on speakerphone. I recently had a patient with dementia whose one child is a family doctor and the other a forensic psychiatrist. They had a lot of questions about the choice of meds and were very happy to have input into Dad's care. I also had a daughter from out of town that was a clinical psychologist whose dad had dementia. She wanted beriberi ruled out. She wrote me a 3-page letter with 21 causes of dementia listed. I phoned her with the nurse listening in on speakerphone and went through every cause. It took a long time, but she was happy and never bothered me again. Switch doctors. I once was giving a tour of the nursing home on my own time to the Minister of Health when a patient's wife came up to me to ask about her husband. I told her I was doing a tour and another doctor was on call for me. She got angry and fired me, and now has another doctor in the home looking after her husband. No one can please everyone, so from time to time it is good to get a new doctor taking over care if you aren't getting along with a patient or his or her family. Do your labs and imaging every weekday to avoid missing or delaying treatment of critical results. Encourage your staff to tell you if any next of kin are unhappy. Thank them for telling you. Call the unhappy person and talk it through. Avoiding polypharmacy. I hate when the doctor's duty list says, "Call daughter of Mr. Jones." It is rarely to praise me or tell me I have won the lottery. In fact, in 25 years, it has been uniformly bad news. I get the nurse to find out what it's about, and then have her on speakerphone beside me with the chart so we can answer all the questions when we call. If you are going to discontinue a drug, tell the substitute decision maker why. They get printouts monthly of all the drugs the patient is on. We stopped all proton pump inhibitors and the residents had no ill effects. We told the substitute decision makers that these drugs are not usually needed, as the food is blander and the drug may cause C. difficile diarrhea. How to reach you. I tell every family that I can be reached by having the nurse write on my daily list to call substitute decision maker at their cell phone number. I tell them not to call me at my family practice office, as I don't have the chart or the nurse who knows them, or their med list, labs, and imaging. I tell them I will get in touch within 24 hours. I tell them about my philosophy of medicine, which is to avoid too many drugs and the ER. My script is this: there is a pill for every ill and an ill for every pill. We will try to cut out as many drugs as we can, and we'll tell you why we are doing it to avoid side effects. For the ER, I say, if Dad has a cut or fracture, we will transfer, but if he gets pneumonia, we recommend treating him here. We will call you for the final decision, but ERs can be confusing to patients with dementia, and they can catch a superbug there. I don't recommend CPR, as it rarely works and can result in the resident having broken ribs and prolonged suffering. I ask the substitute decision maker, what would your mom want if she wasn't confused? I tell them that I wouldn't do it for my mom or myself. Have good after-hours coverage. In Cambridge, Ontario, we have all the family doctors in one call group, so you are only on once a month. This helps avoid being tired and making a bad call at 3 a.m. You can take the day off afterward. You have the time to go in and see the patient and not just do a phone consult. Listen to the nurse. She knows the patient. In summary, the best way to avoid a college complaint is good old communication and a good system. Patients and their families get angry if they feel ignored or not heard. Nature gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth to make sure you listen more than you speak. Malpractice. I have been an expert in over 100 cases involving physician malpractice. I have been sued once in 46 years, during which time I've been involved in over 400,000 patient interactions. Am I smart? Not particularly. Am I lucky? Yes. Am I well organized? Yes. Am I nice to patients and their friends and families? Very much so. This audiobook can help you set up your practice to avoid the pitfalls of malpractice. Almost every case that I was involved in as an expert involved miscommunication between the doctor and patient. When I was sued. Let me tell you about the time I was sued 39 years ago. Thank goodness it had a happy ending for the patient and I. I just finished a 14-hour emergency night shift and was ruefully looking at a poster in the staff lounge that said, "If you don't believe in reincarnation, you should see this place at shift change." A man in a suit approached me. I should have been suspicious, since no one ever dressed up in that emergency department. He asked if I was Dr. Crosby. I looked like I hadn't reached puberty back then, and was so proud to be mistaken for a doctor. My cowlick hadn't yet turned into a bald spot. He handed me a subpoena. Then he turned and marched away. I felt like I had been kicked in the stomach. My palms were sweaty and my heart was racing. I was being sued. Wow, did I wake up? I ran to medical records like it was a cardiac arrest. My hands shook as I read the chart. It was a woman I had seen a year before who had had a corneal abrasion due to her sticking an eyeliner brush into her eye by mistake. I actually remembered her because she was in such agony that I had called the ophthalmologist on call for advice. It was 5 p.m., so he said to try an antibiotic drop and anesthetic drop and patch the eye, and he would see her in the morning. Unfortunately, she developed a Pseudomonas corneal ulcer and needed a corneal transplant. I immediately called our malpractice insurance company, and they were great. They calmed me down and assigned me an emergency physician case manager and lawyer who were very caring and knowledgeable. They talked me through the case and reassured me that very few threats ever got to court or were lost. They advised me to speak to no one and to make copies of the chart and keep one and send them one. They told me to type out the whole story as I remembered it in great detail, minute by minute. I felt terrible and couldn't sleep. My wife was very supportive. I looked at every patient as a potential threat and was worried about everything I did. This gradually went away, as you can't sustain it, seeing dozens of patients daily. Months went by, and I would forget about it, only to be rudely jarred back into the fray by letters from experts from both sides that I was asked to critique in writing. Discovery. A year later, I went to discovery, which means you sit in a small room at the local courthouse with your lawyer, the plaintiff's lawyer, and a court typist. Everything you said could be used in court, so I was really scared. Her lawyer took me slowly through my curriculum vitae, past experience, and training with regard to eye injuries. He then asked me to go through the chart word for word and interpret into plain English what all the medical words and abbreviations meant. This was highly stressful, and the whole process intimidated me. My lawyer then did the very same things, but was much nicer. 2 years later, I was called on the phone by my lawyer and told that the case had been dropped. The patient plaintiff had settled with the eyeliner manufacturer for $60,000. She had healed perfectly. It felt odd and unfinished. I had dreamed of this day for years, but felt cold and empty. I thought I would be whooping it up with champagne, but was just happy to have it over with. It was more a kind of numbness than jubilation. My lawyer said, "Boy, do you docs ever take this seriously. You'll be much more relaxed during the next one. It's a game. The other side tries to make you out as Dr. Evil, and your lawyer tries to make you out as Dr. Schweitzer, the missionary, and the judge has to rule in between." Court. If I had to go to court, this is what would have happened. The court opens at about 10 a.m. with the judge entering from behind the bench. The bailiff, guard, calls out, "All rise," and you stand up. You can't read newspapers or magazines in the spectator section of the courtroom. Below the judge sits the bailiff and recorder, and she talks into what looks like an oxygen mask. To the judge's right, there is a table with the plaintiff and her lawyers. On the judge's left are you and your lawyers. The witness box is to the judge's left side close by. As an expert witness, I once drank the judge's water. Not a good thing to do. There's usually no media unless it's a high-profile case, but you never know. If it's a slow news day, you might be on page 1. There is rarely a jury. The plaintiff's counsel makes opening comments at a lectern in front of the judge about how he views what happened. Witnesses are then called in order of their participation in the treatment sequence. Needless to say, this is incredibly stressful for the doctor, defendant, as your whole treatment and competence is under scrutiny. You will be called to the witness box. Some are standing and some have a chair. You may bring notes and consult them. Dress in a sober suit and tie, or for women, a business suit. Be well groomed. Be confident but not cocky. Do not get into a fight with the lawyers. Ask them to repeat any questions you don't understand. Do not guess or speculate. Stick to the facts. The plaintiff's lawyer will go through your curriculum vitae and then through the chart word by word and comma by comma. Speak slowly and explain in plain English or French, short forms, abbreviations, and spell out big words for the court stenographer. Do not use jargon. If you don't know, say so. Your lawyer will then go through the same sequence. The opposing lawyer will then cross-examine you on any new items that have come up in your testimony. Only answer the question being asked. Try not to speculate on hypothetical situations. You are not an expert or Einstein. The judge is looking for the standard of care that a reasonable physician with your training and experience would render. Average, prudent care. The plaintiff's lawyers have to prove that you fell below the standard of care and that failure to maintain the standard caused the patient harm. Your lawyer will then question you regarding anything new that came out of the cross-examination. The judge will also ask questions for clarification as well. At the end, experts for both sides will go through the same process to establish the standard of care and whether you met it. They will break for lunch from noon until 2 p.m., then go until 4 p.m. at the judge's discretion. After the trial is over, the judge will take many months to render a verdict, which you can appeal if you disagree with it. However, a verdict can only be overturned if the judge makes a serious procedural error in law, not fact.